Welcome to the PS We Expire podcast. I'm your host, Morgan Motzinger. And I always record these intros after I record my episodes. And I am sounding stuffed up and teary because of how much I care about this topic today. So this episode is for special needs parents. And I've structured this episode in a way that the first section I'm addressing parents specifically. The second section I'm addressing people who are friends or family members of parents with special needs children. And then the last section, I get a little spicy and address the world at large about disability and about special needs kids. And I mean, once you get to the episode, you'll understand why I'm crying. But I will just say at the outset, if you are a parent who has a child with a disability or extra needs or is medically complex or whatever, just you're doing better than you think you are. You're doing a better job than you think you are. And hang in there because you're not alone. So thank you for joining me for this episode of the PS We Expire podcast. I am so glad that you're here. This episode is near and dear to my heart, obviously for many, many reasons, because even though Annie is not with us anymore, I will always be a special needs parent. Now, right at the outset, I'm going to say I will use a lot of different terminology. I will use special needs, disabled, children with additional needs, I almost said neurodegenerative, which is, a type of disease, or there are diseases that are neurodegenerative, but I was thinking neurotypical or neuroatypical is what I was going for. I will use terminology like medically complex, medically complicated, medically fragile. I know even within the special needs community, there is like a lot of infighting around what terminology is right to use for our kids. And I'm just right out of the gate, like gonna call bullshit on that, because there are so many things that we have to fight for that we don't need to be fighting with each other about what the proper terminology is to use for our kids. Now, there is definitely something to be said for speaking to people who are not part of this community by their own experience. It's like the world at large who is, largely perhaps ignorant, whether willfully or just because they haven't been taught yet how to address people in this community. And the third part of this episode is going to address people in the larger community. So the way that the format is going to be set up for this episode is that the first section is going to be addressed to parents with special needs children specifically. This could also apply to parents who have special needs adult children. So just because, your child is older and has additional needs doesn't mean that this episode doesn't apply to you. I would, in some ways, some of these things apply to you even more because you have been at this for so long. The second part of the episode is for the people in your life who are part of your family, who are part of your community, who are part of your support system, so that if you want to share this episode with them, and perhaps you want to make sure that they're catching the pieces that are pertinent to how they can support you best, you can reference them to just that section of the episode. And then, like I said, the third part of the episode is directed towards the world at large, and I have a little bit of a bone to pick with some of the people out there. So this episode is for you if you are the parent, you're the mother, the father, the caregiver, or the close community of a child who has special needs. This is important to talk about because the standard care needed for raising a neurotypical, able-bodied, normal developing child, the standard of care for raising a child who doesn't fit into that box is exponentially raised when you pile on any kind of additional needs. Like I remember when my kids were little, there were many, many, many times where I seriously wondered if my sanity would survive, especially toddlerhood. And I wish that was a little bit of an exaggeration. I mean, maybe it's a tiny bit of an exaggeration, but probably not much, because there were times when I literally thought, I don't think that my mental health can survive this chaos. And with special needs parents, many of the things from toddlerhood, from those chaotic years, from those ultra dependent years, don't ever go away. So I just want to address straight out of the gate that raising a child that has any needs above and beyond what a quote unquote normal child needs is so hard. It's so difficult. So I hope that some of the things that I'm going to talk about in this episode today will be encouraging to you, will be helpful to you, will maybe add some more tools in your toolbox. I don't know, but if nothing else, it will help you feel not alone. Because that is one of the things that I felt so often. I felt so alone. So let me jump right into this episode. And as I do so, I will say right out of the gate, if you have not, if you don't really know anything about me and you're wondering, who is this woman and what kind of authority does she have to speak into my life at all about my special needs child? I'll give you a little brief history, and then you're welcome to dig through any of my socials. You're welcome to dig through my website and previous podcast episodes to learn more about this. But my daughter, Annika Rose, Annie is what we call her, was diagnosed when she was 3 years old with a neurodegenerative, rare genetic disease with no cure, no treatment, and a life-limiting diagnosis. So she was diagnosed with Sanfilippo syndrome, which is one type of many types of a lysosomal storage disorder, which means that in lysosomal storage disorders, that our cells, which are typically very, very, very efficient at recycling waste, our cells take in what it needs and it gets rid of what it ends up not needing. So even, like on a macro level, we eat what we need, and our body does a really good job of pulling nutrients and pulling water and pulling everything from it. And then we excrete the waste. We get rid of the waste. Our cells are doing that at a microscopic level all the time. They're so smart. But if you are missing an important little piece, in her case, it's this tiny little enzyme that was in charge of getting rid of the waste from the cells that was missing for her. So the buildup happened in every single cell in her body. So it affected her neurologically. So it affected her brain, and it also affected her body. And as this waste just built up and built up and built up, it caused progressive damage for her. So she developed like a fairly normal child. And then as the storage disorder continued to break down her cells, it broke down all of her skills and made her lose everything that she had worked so hard for. So my sweet little blonde, gravelly voiced tank of a child slowly lost her ability to speak, her ability to laugh, her ability to smile, her ability to eat by mouth, her ability to drink liquids, her ability to walk. She had seizures. She always wore a diaper. She ended up having a feeding tube. We had heart issues that we were on the lookout for all the time, disordered sleep. Trying to think, oh man, like skin problems that we were looking out for, neurological things, a lot of crying that we couldn't really pinpoint. So all of these things that just over time became more and more severe until she died from a fairly minor respiratory infection when she was 14. at the end of 2022. So in the course of this disease breaking down her ability to, have flexibility in her joints, she was at high risk of a respiratory infection, just giving her her little body more than what she could bear. And that is what ended up happening for her. So I understand the complexity that comes with raising a child with additional needs, because it's not just about the physical needs. If it was just about the physical needs, like really practically, yeah, that's a lot, but you can manage that. But when you're talking about nights awake worrying about your child's future, whether that's because of a degenerative disease or because you have a child who may outlive you and you don't know who's going to take care of them, these are big things to have to manage. So as a parent with a child who has special needs, there is incredible emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual fatigue that just comes with the territory of having not only additional physical care that comes with your child and heightened sense of safety, and also wanting to make sure that your child has all of their needs met and also has an enjoyable life. And navigating that and trying to figure out how to do that is so difficult. So parents, number one, part one of the episode, number one, is you are doing a great job. And I don't think that you probably get to hear this enough, but you are doing a good job. I know how hard you're working. I know how many sleepless nights you've spent Googling things, WebMDing things, because a rash isn't just a rash, because a cough isn't just a cough, because a movement isn't just a movement for your kids. It could be something different. You are doing a good job when you are finding specialists and finding alternative ways to help your child get their needs met, whether that's their needs in school or needs at a hospital or needs through, additional vitamins or a different way of eating. I know that you are doing your research, that you are fighting for your child, and you are doing an excellent job. I know that you are pouring yourself out for your child. And I know that you are tired. A couple of years ago, I sent out just a little questionnaire to special needs parents, asking them, what are you struggling with the most? What are you struggling with the most? And what do you wish that people knew? And the thing that I heard over and over and over again is, we are tired. So I just want to acknowledge that I know how tired you are, and that it's not a tired that would be fixed by being able to sleep in on a Saturday or being able to take a big long nap, or maybe for once in a long time get a really good night's sleep. This isn't the kind of tired that can be fixed by this, but this is like in your bones, in your soul, weary. And I see you. So number one is that you're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. Number two, and I hate myself for saying this, and also I know it's so important, please ask for help. I know that when you are at the end of your rope, the last thing that you can think about doing is trying to train somebody to take care of your child in the way that you would take care of them. I know that it is heartbreaking to find someone that is not only willing and able, but wants to help your child in the way that you want them to be taken care of, and to connect with that person and train that person and then end up having them walk away. It's one of the worst things. It's one of the worst things, because not only do you have the energy expenditure of training that person, but there's also this, I wouldn't say jealousy or envy is the right terminology, but it's the only word I can think of to really kind of encapsulate how this feels like, is that you can see that when it's too difficult or inconvenient for someone else, they have the luxury of walking away. and you don't. So I understand that the second one, please ask for help, kind of feels a little bit like a kick in the nuts, I suppose. like, aren't I doing enough already? How can I possibly find someone else to help? I can only speak from my own experience when I say that I waited way too long to be very persistent in trying to find help. And taking, as much as possible, taking some of the emotion out of it and really just continuing to try and find the right people to watch Annie and take care of Annie. I got burned out over and over and over again to the point where like my health was seriously suffering. And I think part of it is like I didn't really know how to ask for help for myself. It's like it almost felt like, well, I was Annie's mom. I should be the one to take care of all these things. I should be the one to be on it all the time. And then, obviously, like taking into account the financial impact of having someone else help care for your child. And I also know that family isn't always reliable. They don't always get it. They're not always able, whether physically or emotionally, able to meet you where you need them. Or maybe they've told you straight up that they're tired of being asked for you to help them, or they're just dodging your phone calls. I don't know. But I know how exhausting it is to ask for help. And I'm so sorry that that's the reality for many of you, if not all of you, that there is a significant lack of help. What I'm going to suggest is that you find it in yourself a way to continue to ask for help so that you don't get into a place where you cannot take care of your child in the way that you really want to because you are so broken down. And I feel for you because it's really difficult to find good help. It can be really difficult to find good help. But the reality is that we will never get that help if we don't ask for it. So you got to fight for yourself. You got to fight for your own well-being alongside your child's. Number 3, we have to learn to accept that other people cannot care as much as you do. Oh man, this one's so hard. Like I have had so many wonderful people come into our lives as a result of Annie's needs. I have had some of the best people that I've ever met in my life. Some of the most kind and compassionate and willing people have come into my life because of Annie. And some of them aren't really a part of my life anymore and haven't been for a long time, even since before Annie passed away. Because the reality is that everybody's got their own stuff they're dealing with. Everybody has their hard things. Everybody has their financial trouble and their relationship trouble and their trouble with their children and their trouble with their communities. Everybody has their own challenges. And so no one has the bandwidth to think about your reality and your life with your child to the same level that you do. Even the most kind-hearted and attentive caregivers and doctors and people who are helping you manage maybe like insurance stuff and specialist stuff and all of that, nobody is going to care as much as you do about your child. And the sooner that we kind of just accept that that is the reality, the sooner that we will feel less angry at other people for not caring to the same level that we do. That's true for everybody, and that's true for us as well. Number 4, find ways to take care of yourself. Prioritize your mental and physical health. I mean, this one, in the same way that number 2 about please ask for help, it feels like another punch in the nuts, probably, because it's like this. I remember like seeing all these quotes and whatever about like self-care and thinking, I don't even have time sometimes, especially when my kids were little. Like I didn't even have time to take a shower. And sometimes I was like eating the leftovers off of my kids' plates, their chicken nuggets or whatever. And I was like, who are these people that have time for self-care? And the type of self-care a lot of times that's touted costs money. And what I'm going to suggest is that you find ways, just little ways here and there, where you just get to take a few moments to care about yourself, to care for yourself, even if it's a 5-minute meditation in your closet with, your AirPods in, your headphones in. Even if it's that you occasionally manage to get up a little bit earlier than the rest of your family and you just get to have that cup of coffee by yourself. Or maybe it's, at night you stay up reading your romance novel later than you quote unquote should, because that gives you some time to yourself that you get to attend to your own inner world. I ended up figuring walks into my routine. And sometimes Annie would be with me on those walks. And sometimes, she would be with the woman that was taking care of her sometimes. But I would take walks, and I would use that time to evaluate how I was doing. I also, a really important self-care practice was going to therapy, going and seeing a counselor. And it does take effort to do things in those moments that I know are good for me long term, not just good in the moment. Because there's a difference between using those moments to just completely veg out watching something and eating, junk food or whatever, and doing something else that is going to contribute to your long-term health. And I know that this is a struggle for everybody. This is like I'm talking to everybody here, but this is especially important for you if you have a special needs child. And it is a difficult choice to make. And it can feel even more difficult when you feel like you've earned, that you've earned the junk food, or you've earned the junk shows to watch, because you do have it more difficult than normal people. I know it. And so it is going to be more difficult, but even more important for you to take care of yourself. And the game changer for me really was like when I started to have some health issues as a result of not taking care of myself in the way that I really needed to, that I had this little wake up call where I was like, oh, if I'm not taking care of myself, I know for a fact that I'm not going to be able to take care of my children in the way that I want to. I know that I'm not going to be able to meet their needs in the way that I really, really want to. If I'm down and out, who then is going to take care of my kids? Who then is going to take care of Annie? Even with all the help that I had, who's going to take care of her? And I started to prioritize taking care of myself so that I would be around in a healthy way to be able to meet their needs. I know this one's tricky. Number 5, if you are the primary caregiver, if you're the primary parent who's taking care of your child with special needs, a diagnosis, or that diagnosis, that reality will change your relationships, especially with your significant other. If you are the person who is setting up the doctor's appointments, and you are the one who's doing all the researching, and you're the one who's, setting up feeding supplies and incontinence supplies and appointments and IEP meetings with the school and getting the equipment and all of that, that is going to be a really, really, really important thing to navigate with your spouse or with your partner, because there is a shit ton of resentment that can build up when you feel like you're the only one who's attending to those needs. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't make sense for you to do that, because it might. It might make sense that you are the one who has the bandwidth to do that, because you maybe by choice or by circumstance, you are the stay-at-home parent. Now, I know that some of you, that has come as a result of, you know, some type of event or accident or illness that has made your child disabled. Some of you maybe were already in that position before your child was born, that you were the primary caregiver. But this is a whole nother level. This is a whole nother level of attention and a whole nother level of energy expended towards your child's needs. And if there are unspoken expectations in your relationship when it comes to that special needs child's needs, if there are unspoken expectations when it comes to who's going to do what with your child, who's going to be in charge of what, who's going to be on top of what, who's going to, who's going to be making sure the medication gets refilled, who's going to be the one who's researching new, clinical trials or homeopathic symptom management or something like that. If you are always going to be the one to do that, if those expectations are unvoiced, it can create an incredible amount of resentment in your relationship. So what I'm suggesting is that you have the uncomfortable conversations where you talk about what's working and what's not working. And when we talk about those things, there's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong here. There's really only, is this working or is this not working? There isn't, especially when it comes to a child that has an additional needs, you got to just blow gender roles and gender norms out the door completely. Because these are special exceptions to any of that gender role bullshit. This level of care requires that you have help. And if you get to the point where you don't feel like you can even trust your person with sharing some of that load, I guarantee you a wedge will be forced into your relationship. So address that as early as you possibly can. And I would highly recommend, even if things seem great with your spouse, I highly recommend getting into some type of marriage therapy, some type of couples counseling where you can talk about these things before they bubble up and cause some real disruption in your relationship. Number 6, it is completely okay to resent where you're at. It is completely okay for you to not like your circumstances. It is totally normal for you to grieve the life that you thought that you would have. It is completely normal to grieve the life that you thought your child would have. Now, I'm going to make that distinction because many of us will grieve the life that we wish our child had, but for some reason we don't admit that we also are grieving the life that we wish that we had. Some of you probably had careers. Some of you had career aspirations. Some of you had ideas about things that you wanted to do with your kids when they were certain ages. Some of you had ideas about what your child was going to be like when they were a teenager or a young adult or an adult. And it is not just normal, but it is important for you to grieve what you've lost. With Annie, I didn't even realize that I grieved things that were just kind of like expected normal things for a kid. Like I grieved that she wasn't going to have normal sleepovers. I grieved that she wouldn't ride her bike to school. Things that it wasn't just about like grieving that someday she wouldn't be, like have this amazing career or that she would graduate top of her class or whatever. It was, like not anything spectacular, but it was like grieving the very, very ordinary, basic, like kind of givens of life. And I had to go through a process of grieving that would not be her reality in the way that I kind of just, like defaulted thought that it would be. I also massively grieved the mom I thought I was going to be. I thought I was going to be like the kick-ass, cool, like fun mom. And in some ways I still am and still was and didn't lose that part of myself, but there was a part of me that had to change in order to fit what Annie's needs required of, and I grieved that part of myself that had to change to become that person. I had to grieve that part of myself that was like happy go lucky, and grieve that part of myself that was like fun loving and wasn't, a huge planner. All of that had to change in order to take care of Annie to the best of my ability. And I grieved me, I grieved myself, I grieved this, life that I had before me, even though I didn't have, like any huge plans for myself of what my amazing life was going to be. But it was so different from what I ever imagined for myself. And I had to go through a period of grieving. And even though Annie has passed away, I still grieve part of me. I grieve the Morgan who didn't have a child die. I grieve that I am navigating what that's like now. So it is perfectly okay to resent where you are. That does not mean that you don't love your child. That does not mean that you aren't going to continue to show up for them and do the best that you possibly can to the best of your ability to make sure that they have a successful life, no matter what that looks like, a healthy life, a pain-free life, a life where they know that they're loved. And it's okay that you don't want to be where you are right now. It's okay. My family and I, we took a 2-week road trip down through, so I live on the Oregon coast, and we took this 2-week road trip down through California, on 101. So we went down through the redwoods, got to cross the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, which was super fun. We hit, the Disney parks, and then drove over through Arizona. We went to the Grand Canyon. We went up through southern Utah, through Bryce and Zions National Park and Moab, and saw arches, and went up and visited family in Salt Lake City, drove to Boise and visited friends, and then zipped over back to where we live. And that trip was great. Our 2 other children are 7 and 12 years old, and it was so fun with them. And at the same time, I was grieving that Annie wasn't with us. And I knew that if she was with us, we wouldn't have been able to do most of what we did on our trip. Or if we did, it would have been so difficult to do those things. There would have been, things that one parent was taking the other 2 kids to while the other one stayed behind. That was kind of the way that things went, especially as Annie's needs got bigger and bigger as she got older and it got more difficult. There was a pretty big chunk of time where I just feel left out. I felt left out a lot. Even if we went somewhere, I felt left out a lot because there were just things that I couldn't do with her. And so, I spent a lot of time at home with her while my husband took our other 2 kids out doing other things, and feel like I missed out on a lot, but what was the alternative, And I I did commit to doing hard things with her, so taking her places that were difficult to go to, because I didn't want us to miss out on making memories as a family, even if they were difficult. I wanted Annie to be a part of those memories with our family. So we did do that. But on this trip in particular, we were staying in a hotel in Moab, and there was a great pool and a hot tub that was right next to the pool, and was sitting out there one evening, and there was a family there who they had 3 girls, and 2 of them were with the mom in the pool, and the dad carried the other daughter into the hot tub and sat with her. And I think that I don't know. I didn't end up talking with him, but she looked like she probably had pretty severe cerebral palsy. But he just sat in the hot tub with her. And I thought about all the times when I was him, when I was sitting with Annie and I would be watching Ryan play with the other two kids and just wishing so desperately that we all were playing together. Or, being at a family function and having to just prioritize focusing on Annie to keep her safe and watching everybody else just seemingly so carefree, so chatty and lively with each other. And here I was feeling so left out with Annie. And as I sat by that pool, reading my book with my feet in the water and my sunglasses on, and seeing this dad sitting in the hot tub with his daughter, I would have given anything to feel left out again. And it's a weird paradox to hold, where I was so grateful that I got to be doing what I was doing, and also wishing that I wasn't able to do what I was doing because I wish that Annie was with me. I just tell that story to say that I know what it's like to feel so alone, in a restaurant with your child, to feel so alone at a grocery store, to feel so alone in your home, because going out is so challenging. It's so difficult because going out means a ton of preparation, perhaps, a special type of transportation. It might mean looks from other people. It might mean comments from other people that are less than kind. Like, going out takes a lot. And I know how isolating and lonely it is to be at home all the time. So this number 6, it's okay to resent where you're at. It's okay. It's okay to not like it. It's okay to be sad about it. It's okay to grieve it. And also, don't let yourself sit there too long. Don't let yourself sit in that the resentment. Don't let yourself sit in the feelings of, I wish it were different. I wish it were different. Because the truth is that it's not. So give yourself some time to grieve. And then also think about the things that you actually have control over. I remember years ago, I heard this story about Christopher Reeve. And if you grew up watching the Superman movies, Christopher Reeve is so hot. And I'm not sure how old he was when he had a riding accident. So he was riding his horse, and I'm not sure of the details, but he was paralyzed from the neck down. And I remember him talking about how every morning he would give himself 20 minutes to be sad about his reality. He would give himself 20 minutes to be so upset and think about how unfair it was, that was his life, that that one accident had caused this life-changing event, that things would never be the same. He gave himself 20 minutes to think about it. And then that was it for the day. He didn't allow himself to stay there. He didn't allow himself to completely shut off from the rest of his life. He figured out what he did have control over, and he moved toward that. In the same way, I think we really do ourselves not only a disservice, but really can impact our mental and physical health in a really big way if we don't allow ourselves to grieve, if we don't allow ourselves to admit how hard it is, if we don't allow ourselves to really feel how angry or resentful or bitter we are about our circumstances. But we cannot stay there. We cannot live there, because that will destroy you from the inside out. So don't stay there. So this is part 1. This is part 1 of the episode. Now part 2, I want to address the people in your life who love you, who care about your well-being. And I want to say this to you first. I know that sometimes you just don't know what to do. Sometimes you feel like you don't know what to say. You don't know how to respond. You don't know how to react. You're not really sure what type of help to offer. And maybe you don't want to. Maybe you don't want to offer help. And this is what I would say. I'm going to go through a little, you know, kind of four. How many points do I have here? 4 points. But I will say this first. If you don't want to offer physical support yourself, help them find someone who can. Because just because you don't, maybe have some people are really squeamish about, changing diapers or doing feeding tubes or whatever. Like, if you don't feel comfortable with that, okay, so be it. Help them find someone who can help them. Okay, that actually probably is part of number one. But for the people in your life, number one, your friend or family member who has a special needs child is exhausted. They are exhausted emotionally, mentally, physically. Their relationships are strained. Their self-care is probably out the window. So if you can offer support, respite support, please do it. Even if it's once a month, please keep checking in. Please keep offering help. Please educate yourself outside of that person on what their child has. If you can't offer physical support, whether are squeamish about it, or you are super busy yourself, or you don't live near them, please put in the effort to find other ways to help. There's actually here's a list of ideas how to do that. And then I'll go back to my other little list. But here are some really practical ways to help the person that you care about, even if you're not close. Well, I mean, some of these are you have to be close, but you could figure this out if you're not. Okay, so number one, drop off a meal. It's a pretty obvious one, but a lot of times that will happen in heaps and mountains shortly after a diagnosis or a hospital stay or, some big event. But it's after the noise and the chaos has kind of died down that people really need this. So if it's like, a month, 2 months, 3 months after that big event, after, most other people have gone back to life as normal, this is a good time to drop off a meal. Number 2, bring over coffee. Number 3, send a gift card for a meal delivery. Number 4, have a conversation and really listen. Number 5, learn how to care for their child. Educate yourself. Apart from just what that person can tell you, the Googles are available to tell you how to help with a kid that's on the autism spectrum, how to feed a child through a feeding tube, how to change a diaper for an adult child. Okay, these are things that you can learn. The resources are endless. Just take the time to do it. Number 6, watch their loved one for a few hours. So even if you can't do an all day, you can't do an overnight, that's fine. Go over for a couple of hours when it's their nap time. Okay, just for the parent to just have some time to turn their brain off. Number 7, take the other kids out. Number 8, help with a chore like dishes, laundry, picking up groceries, or mowing. Okay, so many of those like basic things can fall off pretty easily if that child, especially if they're having like some type of like big event or like a neurostorm, or they're having a lot of seizure activity, or they have a big surgery coming up. So many of those like basic household things will fall to the bottom of the list. So helping with things like that, dishes, laundry, picking up groceries, and mowing their lawn. Number 9, go to an appointment with them. Especially if their child is having like a procedure where they have to be sedated, sitting in the waiting room absolutely sucks. It sucks so much. And having somebody there with you is a big deal. Number 10, hang out and be a friend. Maybe they need to have their mind taken off of whatever's happening, and you guys just need to talk about the latest episode of I don't know. What's even on right now? I know it's not Game of Thrones, but that's the one that came to mind. Have a conversation with them that is not centered around doctor's appointments or, like the latest caregiver mess up or whatever. Like, just hang out and be a friend with them. Help remind them of who they are apart from their role as a caregiver. Okay. So that kind of went along with number 1 is find ways to help. Number 2, put notes in your phone on important dates. I cannot tell you how meaningful this one is. It's so meaningful to do this. All you have to do is go into your calendar app and just put a little reminder there. The important dates could be the dates that they got their child's diagnosis, anniversaries of death. This could be an important date of like an upcoming surgery. Just a note to say, hey, I'm thinking about you today. I know that so-and-so is going in for this procedure. I'm here if you need anything. So when a friend mentions a date or, you see it on a post or something, just put a note in your phone. That's all you got to do. Just put a little note in your phone, a reminder to reach out to them. This is a bigger deal, I believe, than even just wishing your friend a happy birthday, because this is out of the ordinary, but they're not out of the ordinary dates for that parent. Okay, number 3, keep checking in. If you get a little ping to check in with your friend, do not ignore that. Don't ignore that, because even if you're like, hey, I was thinking about you and everything is going smoothly, just checking in helps your friend know that they're not alone. Which brings me to number 4. Your friend feels lonely. They do. Even if they are super involved and they are out and about doing things and they seem like they are still participating in all the activities, I guarantee you that your friend feels alone. Your friend or family member feels alone. Find ways to include them. Even if they can't come, keep inviting them. Keep inviting them. Even if they tell you no 100 times, keep inviting them. Unless they tell you, please stop inviting me, keep inviting them. Because there were many, many times when, look, I know that FOMO is a real thing and that all of us deal with this when we see friends post pictures on Facebook of them hanging out. It hits different when the reason why you can't go hang out is because your child needs you in that way. Just keep inviting your friend. Keep inviting your family member, even if they say no. Even if they say no, keep inviting them, because the invitation tells them that they haven't been forgotten. Okay, that's all I got for caregivers, your friends and family, the things that would be helpful for them to know. This is for the general population. Okay, I might be getting a little bit spicy here. And I hope that these 3 for the general population, that these don't need to be applied to anybody in the friends and family and support system category. If so, shame on you and stop doing this immediately. Okay, number 1, stop saying retarded. Immediately stop saying that. I know I grew up in the 80s and 90s where that is just something that we said and that we made jokes about the short bus. I know, I get it. But it is time for you to update your vocabulary to stop saying retarded. Because if you use that in a way to say stupid or less than or whatever, and you're going to apply that to my child, no way. Remove that word from your vocabulary immediately. Okay. The second one is stop offering hollow platitudes. Stop it. The 2 that came to my mind right away is God knows best. Well, that may be true, but it's so unhelpful. And it also shames the parent into believing that how they feel about their circumstances and how they feel about their life with their children is invalid and not okay. The other one I thought of is God doesn't give you more than you can handle. What? That's not even anywhere in The Bible. That's not anywhere in spiritual text that God doesn't give you more than you can handle. These phrases are a way for people to keep you at arm's length. These are a way for people to feel like they're offering something helpful without actually kind of getting down in the hard thing with you. So please stop saying these like empty phrases, these platitudes. They are more hurtful than you think they are. You may think that they are helpful and they are light and they are positive, but they're not. The majority of the people who have shared with me these types of things that people have said to them, particularly during really, really difficult seasons, like maybe right after a diagnosis, right after an accident, or right after death, are the most hurtful things that people can say. I will offer you some things that you can say instead. It's perfectly fine to say, I'm sorry, tell me more, or ask them questions about their children. Ask them questions. Allow yourself to be uncomfortable. Allow yourself to be sad. Allow yourself to be touched by what another person is going through. Don't try and like pat, put this like little platitude on it. Stop it. Number 3, mind your business. Mind your own business in public. You have no clue what that child who is having an absolute meltdown in the grocery store aisle is dealing with. You have no clue. And I get that it may feel okay or justified to you to assume that this is a case of bad parenting and what is our country coming to, but you have no idea. You have no idea what that family is going through. Mind your own business. If you see children that are quote unquote misbehaving at a restaurant, mind your own business because you don't know. When Annie was little and she was still, eating by mouth, I would say at this point she wasn't really talking a ton. But she was fast. She was so fast and she loved food. And I have so many stories of being at a restaurant and someone would be walking by our table, and as quick as you could blink, she would reach up and grab something off of their tray and shove it in her mouth. I remember being in the McDonald's play place. Yes, I took my children to the McDonald's play place, so sue me. Being in the McDonald's play place, and she just, wandered over to somebody's table. It was a cute little family sitting down, eating food, and she just reached over and grabbed a chicken nugget off their tray and started eating it. Now, some people would look at me and say, why aren't you controlling your child? And this is my response to that. Yeah, I get it. And also, she's super fast. And I mean, what do you expect me to do? Make her sit at my table the entire time? We would be at church and one of us would be holding her hands during, the refreshment time afterwards. And she would just get her little hand loose and somebody would be standing a little bit too close to her and she would put her hand in their coffee. It wasn't that she didn't care. She just didn't know. She didn't know. She didn't have the awareness for it. And if I was going to continue to be in my life with her, if I was going to continue to allow her to participate in activities that our family was doing or activities that I thought would bring her joy, like hanging out in the McDonald's play area, there were inevitably going to be instances like that. There were going to be stories that I could tell about her, putting her hand to somebody's cake. So you have no idea what somebody is going through. And Annie looked normal enough. She looked like she knew enough what she was doing that people would assume that she was just being naughty. She went through a phase when she was hitting other kids, and we couldn't figure out how to teach her to not do that because even though there were some things that were cognitively aligned with the age that she was, there were other things that just weren't. And I had people assume really nasty things about her because of that behavior. And that's not okay. It's not okay. So mind your own business in public. You don't know what people are going through. Before I wrap up this episode, I want to read a poem that I'm pretty sure I might cry my way through, but it's written by Jess Ronnie, R-O-N-N-E, and I found it on Facebook, and it's called When He Outgrew Cute. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this is because part of what I said that last one is that you really have no idea what somebody is going through. But I also want to address the fact that parents who have older special needs children, I recognize that there are some things for you that are just going to get more difficult the older that they get. So I want to read this poem to you, partly as a way to help you understand that you're not alone, that I see you. I understand some of what you're going through. So I'll just read this and then wrap up this episode. It's called When He Outgrew Cute. When he outgrew cute, the looks changed from compassion to concern towards him and towards those who supported him, and sometimes disgust overshadowed concern as he stubbornly clung to his ways. When he outgrew cute, the calls increased, calls desperate for help, desperate for summer options for a 15-year-old in briefs, desperate for respite, desperate for adaptive equipment, desperate for anything that would assist a nonverbal child or anyone. And the voices were silent, or they whispered, "Sorry, sorry." When he outgrew cute, his movements were no longer celebrated, but instead feared. Violent headbanging, aggressive pulling, dangerous optimism with the strength of a man and not that of a child. When he outgrew cute, the damage began. Damage to walls, damage to others, and damage to himself. And this damage wreaked havoc on more than just objects. It wreaked havoc on psyches as well. When he outgrew cute, the walls caved in and the house became a tomb, and the isolation suffocated those within as they desperately yearned to belong to something, somewhere. When he outgrew cute, milestones were no longer encouraged as his future grew dim and symptoms of PTSD set in for those who loved him and had been rattled by his screams for years. When he outgrew cute, mood-altering drugs were doled out like candy, one option after another for him and also suggested for his caregivers. Drugs to dull the pain, drugs to pacify, drugs to silence the demons. When he outgrew cute, she outgrew herself, as every ounce of strength was poured into him, and she got lost in the daily grind, lost in the sleepless nights and invisible behind the never-ending tasks. When he outgrew cute, she outgrew silence, and she raised her voice to join the cacophony for change, and her battle cry rose, a better tomorrow for him and for those who loved him. Because when he outgrew cute, he outgrew society, and that's simply not an option for anyone anymore. When he outgrew cute, she found the strength to move forward, to move toward advocacy and move toward hope. She found the strength to keep going and keep growing, and she found the strength to just keep living. I think this is what I want to say at the end to you special needs parents, is that line, that there is a strength in you. And if you somehow have mustered the will and the tenacity and the power to keep showing up in your life, you deserve a gold medal. You are resilient, and there is still a life that is beautiful ahead of you. And it may not look like what you thought it would look like, but it's available. I want to share just a couple of little messages that people sent me on Instagram as I asked, if you're a special needs parent, what do you want people to know? whether it's something that you want them to know about you or something that you want them to know about your child. And here is what many people said. We all just want to be accepted as we are. This is what you can believe about her child. Believe she's doing her best. Nothing's lost by giving benefit of the doubt, and your relationship wins. For parents, if you want to include us, think about and plan for what we need. Don't be afraid of her. Just living in the typical world to do my job or socialize takes more bandwidth than I have. It's going to be okay. It might not look how you pictured and be really hard, but find your people. This will be the greatest teacher. You will change, you will grow, and you will love the most you have ever loved in all your life. You will gain a perspective unlike anything. It will all be okay. You are not alone. You are not alone. And I'll say it again. If you have somehow mustered up the courage to keep showing up in your life, you are doing an excellent job. And if you haven't, if you are feeling like, what's the point? If you are feeling alone, if you are feeling completely depleted and burnt out and crushed, you're not alone. If your kid is worth it and you are worth it. So before we go,